My name is Adrian Clark. I'm 29 years old. And this is the story of how I was disowned for refusing to babysit, and how that betrayal led me to uncover the biggest lie of my life. My earliest memory is of screaming. My father's voice, always shouting, always shaking the walls. Even when I was just 7 and my little brother Noah was 3, I knew something wasn't right. The house we lived in was small, but the tension inside made it feel like a prison. Mom would try to shield us, brushing our hair in the mornings while singing softly, pretending like everything was fine. But her eyes were always red. Her hands trembled when they touched my cheek. And then one day she was gone. No warning. No goodbye. My father told us she left. That she didn't care. That she had chosen some other life over being a mother. I was too young to question it, but old enough to feel the loss like a fresh bruise every morning. And then came Vanessa. She was my dad's new wife. Younger. Louder. Smelled like perfume and promises. Noah took to her immediately. Started calling her mom before I could blink. But me. I couldn't pretend. Every time she touched my hair I flinched. Every hug she tried to give I stood frozen. You need to be grateful, Adrian. My dad snapped once, slamming his fist on the kitchen table. Vanessa is doing her best. Why can't you? Because I already had a mother. One I hadn't gotten to say goodbye to. One I didn't believe would just vanish without a reason. As the years passed, I became the outsider in my own family. Vanessa and Noah became inseparable. He got the best clothes, the lessons, the attention. I was included. Sure, but it always felt performative. Like a formality. So I buried myself in books. I studied like my life depended on it because it did. If I wanted to escape, education was my only way out. By the time I was 18, I'd earned a full scholarship. And I left. That first night in my dorm room, I looked around at the peeling walls and tiny twin bed and smiled. For the first time in years. It was mine. Oh, mine. Even when I was gone, I still tried to stay close to Noah. I texted, visited occasionally. He was still my brother, even if we lived in two different realities. But the Noah I once knew slowly disappeared. When he was 18 and I visited home over winter break, I asked him, "What colleges are you applying to?" He shrugged. "I'm not." Vanessa introduced me to Avery. Her friend's daughter. She's crazy rich, obsessed with me, and her family basically owns half the city. I blinked. "Wait. So you're not even going to try?" He laughed. "Why would I? Avery's dad said I could have a job at his firm. Vanessa says it's smart." I wanted to scream. The boy who once drew comic books in our bedroom now wanted to marry into wealth and cruise through life on someone else's dime. "You really want that?" I asked, stunned. "Just be taken care of?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "Not everyone wants to work themselves to death, Adrian. Not everyone wants to be alone in some dusty apartment chasing a paycheck." That stung. The wedding happened a year later. Lavish. Over the top. Vanessa planned every detail. My father beamed like a king giving away his golden heir. And me. I was just there. Not celebrated. Not welcomed. Just a blurry face in a family portrait I no longer belonged to. I moved to the city and built my own life. A modest but bright apartment. Solid remote job in finance. I was finally stable. But then Noah started showing up. First with stories. Then with his infant son Micah. "Can you watch him for a few hours?" he asked, breezing into my apartment one Friday night. "Avery has a gala, and I have some investor thing." No warning. No conversation. Just dropped the baby bag and left. It wasn't just once. Soon my home became his backup nursery. Crying baby during client calls. Diaper changes between spreadsheets. Barely slept. Then one day it happened. Micah, barely a year old, reached for a toy, slipped and fell from a dining chair. I rushed to him. He screamed. A bruise was forming. When Noah came to pick him up, I barely got a word in before he exploded. "You let him fall," he barked. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "It was an accident," I said calmly. I was working. I didn't even know you were bringing him today. Oh, so your spreadsheets are more important than my son now, he shouted. I clenched my fists. I have a job, Noah. I don't have a nanny license. And you don't get to dump your kid here and act like I'm a failure. You're selfish, he spat. Heartless. No wonder Dad always said you'd never amount to anything. That was it. Get out, I said, holding the door open. And don't come back unless it's with an apology, or a babysitting check. He glared, scooped up Micah, and stormed out. I sat on the floor afterward, shaking. But I didn't regret it. I had chosen myself for once. I thought it was over. But then, my father texted. Adrian, we're all going to Aspen for Christmas. You'll watch Micah while Noah and Avery enjoy the resort. It'll be a week. Command. Not a request. I stared at my screen, then replied. I already have plans. I won't be available. Seconds later. Don't be selfish. This is family. I replied. Family asks. Family doesn't command. Hours passed. Then Noah called. You're seriously not going to do this for us? No, I said plainly. You're just bitter because you're alone, he snapped. You'll always be alone. Hung up. Minutes later I saw the post. Public Facebook update. Adrian Clark has decided she's no longer part of this family. After all we've done for her, she turned her back. We are deeply disappointed. Effective immediately. She will no longer be included in any family matters or inheritances. We wish her the best with her independence. Had likes, shares, comments from family friends I hadn't heard from in years. I was humiliated. Disowned. For not watching a baby I never agreed to care for. But what happened next was something none of them expected. I stared at the screen, my hands frozen above my keyboard. Disinherited. Disowned. Publicly humiliated with a single click. Like I was nothing but an expired subscription to their twisted version of family. And the worst part. I wasn't even surprised. My father had always wielded control like a sword, cutting down anyone who didn't bend to his expectations. But something about seeing it broadcasted, shared with family friends, neighbors, even old high school teachers who commented, "Hope everything's okay, Red Heart," made my stomach churn. For a full day, I didn't answer texts. I didn't check messages. I sat in silence with a cup of tea I never drank, staring out the window like some grieving widow. Except what I was grieving wasn't a person. It was the illusion. The illusion that maybe, just maybe, I still had a place in that family. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was from someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade. Lisa Mitchell. Froze. That name. My real mother's name. A memory rushed up like a wave crashing through my chest. Her brushing my hair, softly humming, lips pressed to my temple before disappearing forever. The message was simple. Adrian, I saw your father's post. I know this must be confusing, but I've wanted to reach out for so long. If you're willing, I'd love to talk. I've never stopped thinking about you. I stared at the words until they blurred. I didn't respond right away. My hands shook too badly. What if this was a trick? What if this was Vanessa pretending? Or worse, what if it was real? A day later I replied. We can meet. We agreed on a small cafe in Midtown. Public. Neutral. If. I sat at a corner table near the window, watching every customer who walked in. And then there she was. I recognized her instantly. Same kind eyes. Same petite frame. Slightly more silver in her hair than the last time I'd seen her. But it was her. No doubt. Adrian, she whispered, approaching like I might run away. I didn't. Couldn't. I just looked at her. I want the truth, I said. She nodded, tears already spilling from her eyes. Your father made it impossible for me to come back, she said. He told me if I ever tried to contact you or Noah again, he'd file for full custody and paint me as unstable. He forged letters. Told the courts I'd abandoned you. But I never did, Adrian. I never stopped fighting. My throat tightened. I sent letters, birthday gifts, money when I could. Did you ever get anything from me? I shook my head. He gasped. Oh my God. She told me everything. How she left because of the abuse. How my father threatened her. How she sent money for me when I turned 18, but I never received a cent. He had stolen it all. Everything I was told about you. I whispered, suddenly nauseous. It was all a lie. She nodded. Tears slid down my face, and I didn't even try to hide them. I had spent over a decade mourning a woman who never left me, who had been fighting for me from the shadows while I sat in silence, blaming her for abandoning me. I posted the truth that night. Not just for me. For her. For years, I believed my mother abandoned me. But today I learned she never stopped trying to reach me. My father lied. He stole the money she sent, told me she didn't care, and cut her out of my life. I don't owe that man or his wife anything. I found the truth. Found my mother. And I'm done playing their game. Spread like wildfire. Friends messaged. Old neighbors commented. Distant relatives who once liked my father's post about family disappointment suddenly went quiet. Noah tried to call. He declined. Then my father called. I blocked the number. I was done. 2 weeks later, I moved into a smaller apartment just outside the city, only 15 minutes from my mother's home. The place was quiet, sunlit, with a tiny garden I never knew I'd care about but somehow brought me peace. I found myself sitting at my mother's kitchen counter most evenings, helping her cook, listening to stories of my childhood she'd written in old journals. She showed me faded photos she'd kept in a box marked, "My Babies." In one of them I was 3, sitting in her lap, beaming. "I used to sing to you every night," she said softly, running her fingers across the photo. "I remember," I whispered. And for the first time in a long time I felt whole. I stopped thinking about Noah, about Vanessa, about the inheritance I never wanted anyway. What value was money if it came from the same hands that twisted love into obligation? One afternoon, while unpacking a box I had left in storage, I found an old notebook I kept during college. On the first page, in a messy scrawl, I had written, "One day, I'll build something that's only mine. Not because they gave it, but because I earned it." I hadn't remembered writing that, but I had kept my promise. Now, with my remote job thriving and my peace restored, I had begun to dream again. Not of revenge. Not even of justice. Just of a life built on truth. "Do you think you'll ever talk to Noah again?" my mom asked one night, pouring tea as we sat under string lights in her tiny backyard. I looked at her, then up at the stars. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe. If he ever decides to think for himself. But I'm not waiting." She nodded. "Good. You shouldn't." We clinked our mugs together in silence. I didn't need to win back their approval. I had already won back something far more powerful. Myself. The days following my reunion with my mother passed like a long exhale. Years of tension drained from my chest as I relearned how to breathe again. It was the little things, the scent of her lemon hand soap, the way she tapped her spoon twice before setting it down, the way she laughed without fear in her throat, that reminded me of what I'd missed, of what had been stolen from me. We didn't try to rush anything. There were still scars between us. Mine from abandonment, hers from guilt. But we stitched each day together with quiet grace, building something new, something honest. Meanwhile, the noise from the other side of my life started to grow louder. After my social media post went viral, I had expected some blowback. But what came next stunned me. My father, so quick to disown me publicly, posted a follow-up. "Adrian has clearly been manipulated by her birth mother, who abandoned this family long ago. She's trying to tarnish our reputation for sympathy. We only ever wanted the best for her. But sometimes, children can't see past their bitterness." He attached a photo of Noah and Vanessa, holding baby Micah in front of their ski lodge in Aspen. The caption read, "Real family stands together." It was bait. And I didn't bite. But others did. Old family friends, some co-workers, even clients from my freelance accounting work messaged me directly. Some offered support. Others asked if it was true. One even had the nerve to say, "It's just so hard to believe. Your dad always seemed like such a great guy." I ignored them all. I had no interest in defending my reality to people who only saw what they wanted to believe. But what I did decide to do was protect what I'd built. Because now, for the first time, I saw the pattern for what it was. My father, Noah, and Vanessa had always leaned on me. Not because they loved me, but because I was convenient, useful, disposable. They never expected me to say no. So when I did, it rattled their foundation. A week later, Noah emailed me. Subject: "You need to take down your post. Adrian, I'm asking you nicely. That post is embarrassing and unfair. You're painting Dad like some monster. You know he's not perfect, but neither is Lisa. Left. She made her choices. Don't rewrite history just to play the victim. Also, you are hurting us. Clients have been asking questions at Dad's office. Rachel's parents are furious the drama is affecting their name. Just delete the post and move on. I'm trying to be civil here. Do the same. Noah." I read the email 3 times. Then once more, just to feel the disgust fully settle into my bones. No apology. No self-reflection. Just damage control. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to a private folder I had started called "Just in Case." I wasn't planning anything. Not yet. But I'd learned over the years that paper trails were power, and silence was not the same as surrender. Then, one Friday morning, something happened that cracked the door open. I was finishing up a video call with a new client, an independent businesswoman launching her own skincare line, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but 10 minutes later it rang again. And again. Finally picked up. "Adrian Clark?" the voice asked. "Yes." "Who's calling?" "This is Amanda Chen. I work in compliance for Vinton and Cross Financial. Your name came up in a flagged expense report tied to Mitchell and Wexler Holdings." My blood went cold. That was my father's company. "What do you mean?" Asked cautiously. "Do you have a moment to verify something?" she asked. "There are wire transfers on file with your signature tied to several accounts dating back 3 years. It appears you're listed as a financial consultant of record. We need to confirm your involvement." I nearly dropped the phone. "I never worked for Mitchell and Wexler," I said, heart pounding. "Not officially. I've never signed anything on their behalf." Silence. "I see," Amanda said. "That's concerning." She thanked me and hung up. I sat in stunned silence for a full minute, then pulled out an old folder from my desk drawer, the one where I kept scanned copies of all the freelance contracts I'd ever signed. Nothing. Nothing for Mitchell and Wexler. I knew what this meant. They had forged my name, used my credentials, my CPA license, to file documents I had never approved, probably to get around some kind of restriction or regulation. After all, I'd done tax work for small clients. Maybe someone from the firm used my old resume, copied a signature from a submitted invoice. Felt sick. Not only had they disowned me, they had used me, without my knowledge. And now I was on the radar of a corporate compliance officer investigating fraud. I spent the rest of the weekend compiling everything I had. Old emails, invoices, communications between Noah, Vanessa, and me. I contacted a friend from college who now worked in legal consulting and asked her to help me go through everything. By Monday, we had a clear picture. They had used my name, forged digital signatures, and attached my CPA license number to multiple filings over 3 years. It was enough to suggest deliberate intent, and enough for legal action if I wanted it. I didn't know what stunned me more, the violation or the fact that I wasn't surprised. They had never seen me as family. I was a function, tool. And now, that tool was a liability. I emailed Amanda back with a formal statement, then filed a fraud complaint with a state licensing board. And just like that, everything began to unravel. I received a call from the firm's legal department asking for a private meeting. I declined. Noah called me 5 times. I didn't answer. My father emailed me with the subject line, "You don't understand what you've done." But I did. I was no longer the girl hiding in the shadows. begging for their crumbs. I was the woman holding the torch, and shining it on every dirty lie they'd built their empire on. The fire had started, and there was no putting it out now. By the end of the week, news of the fraud investigation hit the industry wires. Discreetly, of course, buried between legal updates and corporate compliance newsletters. But people noticed, especially the right ones. Mitchell and Wexler Holdings, my father's pride, the empire he built and paraded, was under review for internal malpractice. A compliance audit had been triggered, and suddenly, the same family that once boasted of loyalty and legacy was scrambling behind closed doors to explain why my name appeared on financial documents I never touched. They underestimated me. That was their first mistake. Their second was leaving a paper trail so sloppy, even a half-trained intern could have unraveled it. But I wasn't just any intern. I was a certified CPA with years of meticulous bookkeeping under my belt, and something far more dangerous than qualifications. Had a reason. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I wanted freedom. Both were long overdue. On a rainy Thursday morning, as I sat on my mother's sofa with a hot mug of cinnamon tea, I received an unexpected email from an internal employee at my father's company. The name wasn't familiar, but the message was short and sharp. Adrian, I'm sorry you were dragged into this. Some of us have known for a while what's been going on, but no one had the courage to say it. Thank you for coming forward. I stared at it for a long time. Just the thought that someone on the inside had seen what was happening and stayed silent. It both validated my suspicions and ignited a deeper anger. They knew. They all knew. And they let it happen. That night, I decided I wasn't going to be passive anymore. I drafted a formal statement, outlining everything I knew and everything I had discovered. I included digital evidence, time-stamped correspondence, and signature mismatches. Then I sent it not only to the compliance firm but also to a journalist friend I hadn't spoken to in years, one who owed me a favor and specialized in corporate exposés. By Monday morning the article went live. Legacy of lies. Mitchell and Wexler accused of fraud, favoritism, and forgery. Spread like wildfire. And for once I wasn't scared. I was seen. I received dozens of messages within hours. Former employees, clients, even old classmates. Some offered support, others shared similar horror stories of working under my father, stories of nepotism, manipulation, and intimidation. It was like the dam had finally broken. Then came the calls. Noah called me 20 times in one afternoon. I silenced them all. Eventually he left a voicemail. His voice was shaken, a tremble I hadn't heard since we were kids. Adrian. What are you doing? This is our family. You're destroying everything. Dad's losing clients. Investors are pulling out. We could lose the business. Please just... let's talk. Don't let Mom manipulate you into tearing us apart. He still didn't get it. I wasn't being manipulated. I was finally waking up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to protect a version of family that only ever took from me. I was protecting myself. And the truth. I blocked his number after that. Days later, I received a letter from a law firm representing Mitchell and Wexler. It was thinly veiled intimidation, asking for a retraction of my public statements and offering a settlement if I agreed to drop the complaint and remove my post. I forwarded it straight to my own attorney and added a new statement to my post. Attempting to silence someone after years of mistreatment only proves that you were never prepared for the truth to come out. I will not be retracting anything. And I will not be bullied into silence. The post went even more viral. I didn't even notice at first, but friends started texting me screenshots. My face in online articles, hashtags trending, influencers discussing toxic family loyalty on their podcasts. For a moment it felt surreal. Like I'd accidentally stepped into a spotlight I never asked for. But I didn't back down. Because behind all the noise was something even more important than vindication. I was finally healing. My mother, Lisa, stood beside me the whole time. Quiet. And shaken. I'm proud of you, she said one evening, placing a hand on mine as we cooked dinner. Not just for standing up to them, but for choosing yourself. I didn't cry, but my voice caught as I whispered, I just wish I hadn't wasted so many years believing they loved me. She looked at me, her eyes soft. You were a child. You wanted love. That's not weakness, Adrian. That's hope. That night, I lay in bed and thought about what she said. Maybe I had spent years chasing crumbs, trying to earn a seat at a table I was never meant to sit at. Maybe I had believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, useful enough, they'd finally see me as one of them. But they never would. And now, I didn't need them to, because I wasn't their reflection anymore. I was my own mirror. A few weeks later, I received an official notice from the state board. My name had been cleared. My credentials remained intact. The forged filings were being investigated further. Mitchell and Wexler Holdings was now the subject of multiple audits, and the outcome didn't look good. They were going to fall. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But their foundation was cracked, and it was only a matter of time. And me. I started something new. I used my savings and launched my own virtual accounting firm, focused on small women-owned businesses and creatives. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't headline-making. But it was mine. Built from truth. From scars turned into strength. No inheritance. No handouts. No legacy stained by lies. Just me. And the life I finally chose. There's a kind of peace that comes from knowing you have nothing left to prove. That was the thought that lived in the back of my mind each morning as I opened the windows of my new apartment and felt the sun on my face. I was no longer working for scraps of love, no longer performing for a place at a table that had long since cast me out. I was free. But freedom has a funny way of showing you just how much you endured. Every time my phone rang with an unknown number, I froze. Every time I opened an email, my stomach clenched. I had lived too long with the expectation of being ambushed, of someone taking more than they were entitled to. But slowly, day by day, I built a new rhythm. My virtual accounting firm grew faster than I expected. Word spread quickly through local forums and women-led business networks. The fact that I had gone up against a powerhouse firm and lived to tell the tale only added fuel to the fire. People trusted me not just because of my credentials, but because I had been there. I had seen what it looked like when power was abused, and I had stood up to it. Clients came. Referrals followed. By month 3, I had enough work to bring on a part-time assistant. A year earlier, I couldn't even afford to skip lunch. Now, I was mentoring young women out of toxic work environments and helping them reclaim their financial independence. And still, the past lingered. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of a luxury car in the distance, one that looked too much like Noah's, and my throat would tighten. I hadn't heard from him since his last voicemail, but mutual acquaintances let things slip. The business was crumbling. Clients had pulled out. Investors were spooked. My father had stepped down temporarily due to stress. Vanessa had retreated from public view entirely. I didn't celebrate. I just acknowledged it. This was the house they built. These were the cracks they ignored. One afternoon, as I walked into a local cafe for a meeting, I saw someone already sitting at the table I usually reserved. It was Noah. He looked older, tired. Not the golden boy version Vanessa had groomed for years. There were shadows under his eyes, and his once flawless designer jacket was wrinkled. Froze. He looked up and met my gaze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stood. "Adrian," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" Everything in me said to walk away. But something else, something I couldn't explain, told me to sit down. So I did. He didn't waste time. "I messed up," he began, voice low. "A lot." I waited. I believed them. I believed everything Dad and Vanessa told me. That you were bitter. That Mom was unstable. That you were just trying to sabotage everything because you were jealous. He looked down at the table. "But now, I know better. When the audits came, when the lawyers started asking questions, Dad tried to shift the blame to you. Said you'd stolen access. That you were the reason things were falling apart." I clenched my jaw but stayed silent. "But I saw the documents," he continued. The real ones. I saw how your name was forged. How they used your license info without permission. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny it anymore. Noah looked up at me, and for the first time in years I didn't see arrogance. I saw a boy. Lost, afraid, and ashamed. "I'm sorry, Adrian," he whispered. "Not just for the business. For everything. For dumping Micah on you. For calling you selfish. For standing by while they shut you out. You didn't deserve any of it." I inhaled slowly, trying to steady the flood of emotions rising in my chest. "I spent most of my life trying to protect you," I said. "Even when you didn't see it. Even when you treated me like your personal assistant, your unpaid nanny, your emotional dumping ground. I did it because I loved you. Because I thought you'd grow up and finally see me as your sister." His eyes welled. "I do," he said. "I do now. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know. See it now. I see you now." There it was, the thing I had waited years to hear. And yet, it didn't land the way I thought it would. Because I didn't need his validation anymore. I had already rebuilt my life. Already found love and safety in the arms of the one woman everyone told me had abandoned me. I had found strength in silence, dignity in distance. Still I nodded. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It matters." We sat for a few more minutes in silence, sipping our drinks like two strangers reconnecting after a long, painful war. He asked about Mom. "She's well," I said. "We talk every day. Do you think I could reach out to her?" Pause. "She might not be ready," I said honestly. "But if you're serious, write her a letter. No excuses. No justifications. Just tell her the truth. She deserves that." He nodded, wiping at his eyes. We didn't hug when we parted. We didn't make promises. But something shifted. Not a reconciliation. Not yet. But maybe. The first step. That night, I sat with my mother in her backyard. String lights glowing above our heads. "I saw Noah today," I said. She didn't flinch. "How was it?" "Surreal," I admitted. "He apologized." She smiled sadly. "Took him long enough." I chuckled, then looked at her. "He wants to write you." She grew quiet. After a while she said, "Then let him write. Words are cheap, Adrian. But effort, that's something." And she was right. We had built a new life. One grounded in love, not blood. In effort, not obligation. We had nothing left to prove to the people who tried to erase us. And for the first time in my life that was enough. The next few months passed like a quiet symphony. Steady, soft, and almost surreal. For the first time since I was a child, life wasn't survival. It was living. Every morning I woke up in my sun-drenched apartment, made my coffee, and stepped into a routine I had built with my own hands. No demands. No guilt. No babysitting last-minute children or chasing approval from people who weaponized love. Just peace. And progress. My firm was thriving. I had expanded my client base, hired a second assistant, and was now mentoring 3 interns from a local women's shelter. Women who had escaped abusive homes, just like my mother once had. Giving back felt right. Like I was reclaiming every lost piece of myself. One Thursday evening, as I sat with my mother folding laundry in her living room, she reached into her tote bag and handed me a letter. No envelope. Just a folded page. Creased from nervous hands. It was from Noah. I looked up at her, surprised. "He dropped it off yesterday," she said quietly. "Didn't stay. Just said he hoped I'd read it when I was ready." I didn't ask her if she'd read it. I could see the answer in the way she tucked it under a pillow and didn't touch it again all night. Some wounds need more time. Still, something about that moment shifted the air around us. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was the start of honesty. A week later, I received a certified letter from the state's Business Oversight Committee. It contained the final report from the investigation into Mitchell and Wexler. It was over. My name was cleared beyond dispute. The forged filings traced back directly to a handful of internal staff, one of whom was Vanessa's brother, who had been operating as an independent consultant. Their excuse: clerical misunderstanding. My father's name had been formally removed from several boards. Multiple investors had pulled out, and the firm would be placed under temporary external administration until further notice. They weren't bankrupt, but they were bleeding. Noah sent me a short email 2 days later. You were right about all of it. I thought power would protect us. I didn't know truth was stronger. I hope someday when you look at me you see more than who I was at my worst. It was the most human thing he'd ever said to me. But still, I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. Because I wasn't ready. And because I didn't need to chase closure anymore. Around that time something unexpected happened. A woman named Clara Langston, a well-known entrepreneur in New York, reached out through my business email. She ran a national program for young women in finance and had read about my firm in a feature on Financial Feminists of the Year. She wanted to partner. Within a month, I was flying to New York to speak on a panel, standing alongside women I had once read about in articles with awe. And now I wasn't just reading. I was among them. On stage, under the lights, someone asked during the Q&A, "What was your biggest turning point?" I didn't hesitate. The moment I realized I didn't owe anyone the version of myself that made them comfortable. There was silence in the room for a beat. And then applause. After the event, I wandered the streets of Manhattan in heels that pinched and a mind buzzing with clarity. I passed storefronts, smelled roasted peanuts, watched taxis blur past, and I thought of that little girl I used to be. The one who stood on the stairs of that tiny house, clutching her brother's hand, as her world collapsed upstairs. I wanted to hug her, to tell her, "You're going to make it out. And one day, you'll own more than they ever allowed you to dream." Back home, my mother had begun working part-time at a local garden shop. Not for money, just for joy. Watching her pot flowers and gently coach customers on soil acidity made me smile every time I stopped by. "Did I ever tell you," she said one afternoon as we planted daffodils together, "that you remind me of your grandmother?" I looked up. She was stubborn, Mom smiled. Fiery. But when she loved deep. You got her eyes, too. That meant more than I could say. Because I hadn't grown up with stories like that. I'd grown up believing I came from nothing. But now, I was reclaiming my story one truth at a time. In early spring, Noah emailed again. This time it wasn't about business or apologies. Micah asks about you a lot. He remembers your apartment. The toys you kept for him. I know I messed that up too. But if you ever wanted to see him, just to say hi, I'd never stop you. No pressure. I just wanted you to know you mattered to him. You still do. I stared at that email for hours. Micah. The little boy who once sat on my lap while I typed expense reports with one hand and warmed formula with the other. He was innocent in all of this. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't ready to close that door completely. That weekend I told my mother. "I'm not going back," I said. "But I might visit." "For Micah." She nodded. "That's not weakness, Adrian. That's strength. Knowing who deserves your presence and choosing to give it. Not out of guilt, but grace." So I wrote back. Just one line. "Tell him Aunt Adrian says hi. And she hopes he's still obsessed with dinosaurs." And just like that, I allowed a new kind of healing to begin. Not for them. For me. There's a strange peace that comes not with forgiveness, but with understanding. Understanding that people won't always be what you need them to be. That some bridges are better left behind. And that sometimes the only way to find yourself is to walk away from everyone who ever told you who to be. I didn't see Noah right away. Months passed after that last email. My business continued to grow. I was invited to teach a workshop at a university. I started writing a column in a finance blog, helping young women spot financial abuse in family-owned businesses, something I knew far too much about. My mom, now working full-time at the garden shop she loved, had transformed her backyard into a mosaic of color. Tulips, lavender, jasmine. It was therapy without a couch. And every time I stepped into that garden, it reminded me, The world we create for ourselves is always more beautiful than the one we were forced into. Then, one afternoon in late summer, I got a call. It wasn't Noah. It wasn't my father. It was Rachel. Yes, that Rachel. Noah's wife. Her voice was tight. Nervous. "Hi, Adrian, I hope this isn't inappropriate. Micah talks about you all the time. And I know things got messy. But I wondered if maybe you'd like to come to his birthday party. Just for him. He really misses you." Almost said no on reflex. But I thought about Micah. About that tiny boy with bright eyes who once reached for my hand as if it was the most natural thing in the world. So I said yes. Not for Noah. Not for closure. But because sometimes, showing up for the innocent ones is the only thing that matters. The party was held in the backyard of Rachel's parents' house. Expensive. Immaculate. Catered. Balloon arches and organic cupcakes, and a magician who looked more bored than magical. I wore jeans and a blouse I loved. Not because it was fancy, but because it was me. I walked in with a quiet confidence I never had in that world. Micah saw me from across the yard. He dropped his cupcake and ran. "Aunt Adrian," he screamed. I knelt down just in time to catch him in my arms. And in that moment, none of the past mattered. He was laughing, his tiny arms around my neck, and I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot that had been there for years was finally untangling. Noah approached a little while later. He looked humbled. Smaller. Not physically, but in presence. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood a few feet away, unsure if he was welcome. I looked at him and nodded once. Simple gesture. He nodded back. That was it. No long speeches. No tears. No forced reconciliation. Just two people acknowledging a shared past. And a very different future. I stayed for an hour. Long enough to sing happy birthday. Give Micah his gift, a dinosaur excavation kit, and promised to meet him at the Science Museum the next weekend. I didn't hug Noah. I didn't stay for the speeches or family photos. I just left. On my own terms. In my own power. A few days later, I sat on the porch with my mother, drinking lemonade and watching the wind rustle the jasmine vines she'd planted. "You know," she said softly, "you didn't just survive, Adrian." I looked over. "You became everything they tried to keep you from being. You didn't lose your soul in the fight. You found it." I didn't respond. I just smiled. 'Cause she was right. I had walked through fire, and come out stronger, not scorched. I had faced the very people who once controlled every chapter of my story. And I rewrote the ending. Not with revenge, but with clarity. And in the quiet of my own life, surrounded by truth, I realized something. Family is not who shares your name. It's who shows up, who tells the truth, who lets you grow without clipping your wings. So I left the inheritance behind. I left the public family drama, the power plays, the lies. And I chose a smaller world, a garden, a firm, a mother, and a life stitched together by love. Not obligation. I may never fully forgive them, but I forgive myself for staying too long, for believing too hard, for hoping too much. And in that forgiveness, I found my freedom. Adrienne's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the greatest act of strength is walking away from those who claim to love you but only offer control. It takes courage to say no more, and even more to rebuild your life on your own terms. Because family isn't who raised you, it's who respects you. What would you have done in Adrienne's place? Have you ever had to cut off someone to protect your peace? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. There's always another side to the story, and sometimes, it's finally time it got told.